Tikendrajit demonstrated valiant resistance for which he was martyred. On the economic front, among others, the demand for tea pushed private companies to establish larger number of tea estates in Upper Assam and Kachar. With this came the migration of labor into the region and the exploitation of the tea garden laborers. This story is also not told sufficiently, the exploitation of the tea garden laborers, and we would wish more research be done on this and be more sensitive to the tea garden laborers. Annexation of the Northeast continued unabated despite the Queen's proclamation that there would be no further annexation of Indian states and territories into British India. In fact, the completion of empire was in the Northeast. After 1857, the completion of empire came to the Northeast. With the annexation of the Garo Hills in 1873, the Naga Hills in 1866, and the Lushai Hills in 1890. Other than Manipur, which was restive in 1891, the Khasi states and Tripura were quiet throughout much of British political control. The Northeast contribution to the freedom struggle requires recall. It would be of interest to know that 4 Assamese delegates, one representing the Shillong Association, attended the second session of the Indian National Congress held in Calcutta in 1886. Earlier, the Jorhat Sarvajanik Sabha, 1884, followed by the Assam Association, 1904, petitioned in the manner of their mentor, the Indian National Congress. With the benefits of the new education came unease for what the middle class believed were their rightful concerns, including a wide variety of issues on migration, the condition of riots, constitutional progress, and representation in local bodies and Assam legislature. Then, as elsewhere in India, the politics of agitation grew in large numbers to agitate against the partition of Bengal 1905. The politics of the Barak Valley was more charged. Agitation against partition and Assam's involvement in the Swadeshi movement resulted in the formation of the Surma Valley Political Association. Political activity in the region was linked with the advance of the freedom struggle. Through the Indian National Congress initially, and drawn by Mahatma Gandhi's call, the people of the 2 valleys actively participated in the freedom struggle. Gandhi made 4 visits to Assam. Gandhi's visit to Assam in August 1921 galvanized large numbers to support the non-cooperation movement. The Chargola incident of May 1921, when tea garden laborers agitated for increase in wages with shouts of Gandhi Maharaj Ki Jai and their exodus from the Surma Valley, has been noted. Elsewhere, tea garden laborers were actively agitated in Darang and Sibsagar. The nationalist cause for the civil disobedience movement once again ignited participants in the 2 valleys. Assam's reaction to the Cunningham Circular of 19th May 1931 by the Director of Public Instruction, requiring students to sign an undertaking for their good behavior, revived agitation. It drew in large numbers of students into the movement, including those of Cotton College, Guwahati. The agitation continued till the circular was modified. If the national movement was gaining momentum in the 2 valleys, there is reason to explain why it had practically no following in the hills. An understanding of the history of the hill people up to their first exposure to the larger world around them will explain why there was little sense of nationalism among them. Don't grudge them for that. Right? It's very often said that the Northeast did not participate, but don't grudge them for that because they came from a particular background of an administration under the British Raj. Administered differently, British policy of exclusion and segregation of the hill tribes largely kept them aloof from the momentous developments elsewhere in India. It may be mentioned, however, that the operation of British rule gave many of the tribes and communities in the Northeast an Indian identity. The call in September 1939 for India's support for the war against Germany revived the freedom struggle. The Second World War and the fight of the Indian Army and the Allied forces, including the Nagas and the Lushai Scouts, to counter Japanese plans to enter India from the northeast, brought with it participation of many more players in the freedom struggle. Many were influenced by Subhash Chandra Bose's radio addresses and the Azad Hind Fauze's attempt to march to Delhi. The numbers supporting Bose's plan was large across Assam and the Khasi Hills, Manipur and Tripura. And I'm exceedingly very happy that much research is being done on this development of the Azad Fauze and the participation of people from the Northeast in that movement. Remedying neglect. Sadly, the modern histories of India make little mention of the Northeast region other than its annexation into British colonial state. The native states of the region, Manipur, Tripura, and the Khasi Himas, find little mention within the larger histories of India and the Indian states. Little is said of the region's polity, culture, language, and religion. Little is mentioned of the social and religious connection between the Northeast with mainland India. This in part constitutes the neglect of the region in the understanding of what constitutes the larger history, culture, and ethos of India. Prime Minister Modi has urged that the stories of the lesser-known freedom fighters be publicized and the contribution of different sections of society, including the Dalits, Adivasis, and tribals, should be brought to the forefront. He recalled the participation of several freedom fighters of this region, notably Pasaltha Kwangchera, who took on the British in the hills of Mizoram prior to the annexation in 1890, and Gondhar Konwar in his resistance against the annexation of Assam in 1826, and much earlier Lochit Barphukan of Assam and many more who contributed to the independence of their country. And when I say their country, we must remember that if Lochit Barphukan was fighting for a cause, he was fighting it for Assam. He was fighting it for the preservation of the home state. The martyrdom on 20th September 1942 of 17-year-old Kanaklata Barwa and Mukunda Kokoti in their attempt to raise the Indian flag atop the Gopur police station in Assam requires national attention. And again, I'm very happy that a colleague of mine, Sheila Bora, has brought out a book, Kanaklata Barwa, published by the National Book Trust, New Delhi, 2016. Konwar, a Gandhian by nature and follower of non-violence, was ignorant about the sabotage plan. I missed a line. Kushal Konwar was the only martyr in the country who was hanged for his involvement in the Quit India movement. Konwar was implicated in an October 10th, 1942 train accident. Konwar, a Gandhian by nature and a follower of non-violence, was ignorant about the sabotage plan and action. He was declared guilty despite there being no proof against him. He met his death as martyr on 15th June 1943. Bogeshwari Fukanani was among many women in Assam who participated in the movement and became a martyr for the cause of freedom. When you look at the Northeast India friends in the army, you will find that there is a gender, not that much of a gender divide in the Northeast, and our women folk can play as much a role as the men folk. You can see it in Manipur, you can see it in the Khasi Hills, you see it in Assam. And this must be brought to the forefront as an example of the position that women play in our societies. The saga of Assam and her people's role in the freedom struggle should be included not merely in English, Assamese, Bengali narratives, but placed for a wider audience across the country. Prominent in the resistance of British expansion and colonial rule in what is today Meghalaya were the concerns taken up the leadership for the cause of freedom and the sacrifices of Tirat Singh in the Khasi Hills, Okyang Nongba and his martyrdom for the Jaintias, and Pa Togan Sangma, among others, in the last resistance of the Garas to British imperial rule. Several months ago, I was reading what perhaps could be a popular journal in the lounge at Guwahati Airport. And I came across an article on Uttarat Singh, on whom I've done somewhat research on his life and contribution to the freedom struggle. I know from an oral tradition that he died of a stomach ailment. But this article that I was reading in front of me at that lounge mentioned that the British had given him poison and he died because of that. Now, this is very mischievous material, extremely mischievous. And I think we have to be careful as historians to sift out between fact and fiction. The participation of 3 non-tribal, Dhanadhar, Mohanta, Manoranjan Nandi and Nar Bahadur Gurung from Meghalaya, who fought against the Raj in the later years of the freedom struggle, is little known. So also is little known of Tushar Kanti Bhattacharjee and his friends raising the tricolour during the Quit India movement at Rilbong, close to the army headquarters, Shillong. If the role of Rani Gaidarlu is familiar, the resistance and reform movement of her cousin and mentor, Jadanang, of the Rongmei tribe of Manipur requires more detailed attention. So does the efforts of Moje Riba of Arunachal Pradesh, who first raised the national flag in Arunachal Pradesh, then known as NEFA, 15th August 1947. So too should the histories include the contribution of Shanti and Pani Bhushan, Pramod Ranjan Bhattacharjee and Manorama Banerjee, to name only a few participants in the Chittagong Armory raid of 18th April 1930, and the Tripura story of the freedom struggle. Thought may therefore be given to the nature of resistance and participation in the freedom struggle in the states of Tripura, Khasi Hills, and Manipur, on the issues emanating from struggles within these Indian states as distinct or similar to struggles in British India at large. Most of the studies, as a historian I know, relate to British India and from the urban centers. But so little is known from as coming out from the Indian states, where they too participated, and there has been a neglect of this variant of history. In conclusion, the valiant efforts of these lesser-known freedom fighters and many other nationalists requires recall. In Meghalaya and among the Khasis, whenever we meet for the first time, we say Kublai. Whenever we part, we say Kublai again. It's been a pleasure for me to make this presentation, and I say Kublai to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor David Syirmlieh, for that comprehensive overview of the contribution of the Northeastern region in India's freedom struggle. I'll not make any comments now. Maybe we'll sum up after the presentation by Lieutenant General Subrata Saha. General Saha, please. General Saha, please.
A very good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking General Rana Kalita, General Officer Commanding-in-Chief, Eastern Command, and General Panchanathan, General Officer Commanding 101 Area, for inviting me on this occasion. It's hard for me to explain what an honor it is to get an opportunity to speak on a topic that has been assigned to me, contribution of Indian Army. With the permission of the organizers, I would like to read Indian Armed Forces to the integration of the Northeast region with the rest of the country. Why I say it's a singular honor? Because 51 years of my life have been associated with this very topic. Why I say 51? 40 in the Indian Army, in the Assam Regiment, 4 years of ND and IMA, and 7 years in Sainik School, Purulia, where 20% of the students were from Northeast. That time, Assam is the only state that had a Sainik School, Golpara, from where the army commander comes. And we had students from Arunachal, we had students from Manipur and Nagaland who all came to my school. So the association with them started from that time. Perhaps that's why I opted for Assam Regiment, and which I dare say the army commander has missed. Okay, having said that, out of these years, I had the good fortune of retiring as the colonel of the Assam Regiment, which I must tell you is the only appointment in the army which comes by election and not selection. And the second point which I wish to make, I had the good fortune, I was telling Dr. David, of commanding the Assam Regimental Center in Happy Valley, Shillong. I had the good fortune of commanding my battalion in Mongoldoy. And again, with all humility, I must say that in our area of responsibility, we created a statue of Lochit Barphukan. And that was inspired of all the places by a trophy which is there in the National Defense Academy named after Lochit Barphukan. So I must tell you that I think the India's armed forces have always recognized Lochit Barphukan, sometimes subtly, sometimes loudly. But as long as we've done it, I think we have done it. If you see this image behind me, this is that adorable Esther. I think India loves her. The world knows her. And nobody epitomizes the integration or indeed the contribution of the Indian Army in this integration. When she sings the national anthem, it gives you goosebumps. जब ये राष्ट्र गीत गाती है, देशभक्त तो अलग, देशद्रोही के भी रोंगटे खड़े हो जाते हैं. And that is Esther for us. And that is the integration of the Northeast. Go next, please. I think amongst the greatest contributions is defending this region for all its complexities. Look at the number of borders and look at the length of the border that this region has. It is no mean task defending it against all these complexities, not to forget the tenuous Siliguri corridor and the chicken's neck, which I'll be talking about in a short while. And some mention has been made of these legacies of the past that we have had to inherit, in terms of the policy of exclusion, the Hill regulation, and so on. Now, navigating through all of this, and then that notion, then the refrain that we keep hearing about, that the people in the hills don't trust the people of the plains, and the people of the plains don't understand the people of the hills. I think we have had enough of this refrain, and the country need not be encumbered by such thought any longer. Next, please. Coming to the Siliguri corridor, look at this terrain, a length of approximately 160 to 170 kilometers, a width of around 60 to 65 kilometers, through which the rest of Northeast is connected to the Northeast is connected to the rest of India. And just for the record's sake, through this corridor passes 2 national highways, 2 broad gauge railway lines. There are 27 road bridges. There are 14 railway bridges. Look at the criticality. If that is not enough, through this passes 24 million tons of freight goes out of this region every year, and 14 million tons of freight comes inside into this region every year. To take it one step further, look at that little salient which forms between Tetulia and Nepal. It is just about, Tetulia is in Bangladesh, and Nepal, which is just about 20 by 22 kilometers. Through this constriction, ironically and sadly called the chicken's neck, white chicken of all the things, through this neck passes all this, economic linkages, all the other linkages that need to be between this region and the rest of the country. And who is protecting it? It is the India's armed forces. And it is not as if this has not been challenged. Not only in 62, in 67 when Natula happened, what was the intent? In 2017, precisely 50 years later, when Doklam happened, what was the intent? Let's make no mistakes. Keeping Northeast connected geographically, physically, amongst others, is a tremendous contribution that your armed forces are making for you. Next, please. I think as important as defending India was defining India. I would urge all of you to look at the picture and tell me who is this person in that little round circle. Can anybody help me? Thank you, sir. That's Major Bob Cutting. Major Bob Cutting, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to say, belongs to my regiment. Major Bob Cutting did this action when he was in Assam Rifles, and just for record's sake, Assam Rifles is a paramilitary force under the Ministry of Home. Assam Regiment is a regular infantry regiment of the Indian Army. So Major Bob Cutting, on deputation with the Assam Rifles, led a patrol, and please notice, 3.5 years after independence, we told the people of Tawang that you are a part of India, and the flag was hoisted against over there for the first time on 11th February 1951. I think so defining till where is India is as important as defending India, and together both of them tell you how the armed forces have integrated the Northeast with the rest of India. Go next, please. And just as defending and defining was happening, at the same time were these vociferous tendencies that had started. One day before the independence of India, actually Fizo had declared the independence of Nagaland. And that was followed by some negotiation and an accord. And somewhere seeded in that accord, in para 9 to be precise, were the seeds of problems for the rest of history that we have witnessed now. Go next, please. It required another call by Fizo on 22nd March 1956, when he declared the People's Sovereign Republic of Free Nagaland, that for the first time, Indian Army was deployed to counter insurgency in this country. And I think that has been a long journey, which I'll be touching upon briefly. Next, please. Look at this picture. There are no tourists, please. These are insurgents from Nagaland, and if you can see the background, it is against the wall of China. Make no mistakes that China has been involved with the Nagaland, with many insurgencies of Northeast all along. And let me also tell you, it is not China alone. In fact, earlier than China, CIA was trying to meddle into Nagaland. So the involvement has been there of external powers who never wanted India to grow. To fight against all this is what I think India's armed forces have done to great aplomb. In all these cases, again and again, you will notice these were political negligence, little bit which Dada Swapan had already covered, little bit of, manipulation of these internal fault lines by external powers, which has all contributed to the challenges that the armed forces have faced in trying to keep the Northeast integrated. Go next, please. Then came 62. More than the war, more than the image of the soldiers, I would want you to look at the pictures of women and men which are there next to the picture of the soldiers who are trying to climb some height in the jungles of Arunachal. Even if we were losing the 62 war, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we were winning. We were winning because these men and women were picking up arms, were rising to defend their motherland. These men and women, if you look at their dresses, it didn't matter whether they were tribals or whether they were plainsmen. So all those who try to make a division between the tribals and plainsmen must understand from these historical pictures that they all rose together for the defense of their motherland. So these are the seeds of integration that were sown by the armed forces as we kept moving. Go next, please. Well, again, as we are seeing with all the speakers, it has always kept alternating between one and the other. And here we have another call for declaration for independence exactly 10 years after Nagaland on 1st March 1966 by what commenced as the Meso-Famine Front, the flowering of bamboos and the Meso-Famine. What commenced as a Meso-Famine Front, why did that Meso-Famine Front have to come? Because of political and economic apathy of Mizoram by the government in Guwahati. So therefore, the Meso-Famine Front took political overturns, became the Mizo National Front, and there was this call. And again, it was the armed forces that were called in and to come in and take charge of the situation. I'm not for a moment condoning or not apologizing the excesses that had happened on that occasion. But yes, that sometimes is the sad part of otherwise, stories of success. Go next, please. Like we saw pictures from China in the case of Nagaland, ladies and gentlemen, do look at these pictures. They are from then East Pakistan. From the training camps which are there in the Chittagong Hill tracts. It is not only were they fighting from there, look at the image next to it, they were holding weddings also over there. And when I look at this picture of a wedding, frankly, it is no different from a wedding which I see amongst my Mizo boys in the Assam regiment. It is just that where did they find more comfort? Sadly, they found the comfort in hostile neighborhood in those days. Look how much we have traveled from then to now. Go next, please. This actually changed things. This, as you all know, was that, tremendous victory, and I won't say of the Indian Armed Forces alone. It was very much the Indian Armed Forces, the Border Security Force, the freedom fighters from Bangladesh, and the people of the Northeast who supported this entire effort in making sure that India won that stunning victory with 93,000 prisoners of war and the surrender of Pakistan, of course, not to forget the liberation of Bangladesh. That did change things quite a bit. But how long? We will see. Go next, please. But the positives were evident. We saw the signing of the Mizoram Accord in 1986. This definitely was a great political success, thanks to the efforts of the armed forces in those days. But again, as I said, it has always been on-off. Go next, please. Before long, the problem of immigration, which was happening unabated, unchecked, in fact, being manipulated for internal politics, came to bite us back, and the problem happened to do with Assam. For the first time, the army was deployed in September 1990 for what was called Op Bajrang. Between September 1990 to April 91, barely a period of 7-8 months, the situation was brought under control, good enough to hold elections. The army was pulled out from Assam. Elections were held in July, but within no time, the same people who had just sought shelter when the armed forces were operating, they came back to strike. Go next. And we have Operation Rhino that had to commence on 15 September 1991. This picture, right in the center, you see Master Paresh Barua, is from the jungles in Myanmar. So in each of our insurgencies, 1, 2, or more countries in the neighborhood have been involved. Go next, please. And here, the two, Paresh Barua and Sunil Nath, who have traveled so many times to Pakistan to seek assistance to support this insurgency, so-called insurgency of Assam. Yeah, next, please. And as time went along, I do not have so much opportunity to talk how difficult and complex it was to deal with such multiple insurgencies over here. Go next and see how far we have come. As of November 2022, the Northeast witnesses 80% reduction in militancy-related incidents, and 6,000 militants have surrendered. If you look at the map, look at the number of areas from where the Disturbed Areas Act has been removed. This definitely is a cause for celebrating victory. This calls for victory parade, because this is the victory of the armed forces, victory of the people who saw the This is the victory of good over evil. And it has not come cheap. If you go by the records of MHA, 1,340 security force personnel, and I'm sure so many more civilians have lost their lives, have made the supreme sacrifice to reach where we have reached. Having said that, I won't say it's all over. It's fragile, it needs to be sustained, and the pace at which it is being sustained, you've heard figures like 10% of all federal funds going in for it are, I think, excellent initiatives that need to be sustained so that we don't go back again. Go next. And along with the hard part, the kinetic part of the counterinsurgency, I think what the armed forces have done in terms of Opsad Bhavana, I think has earned us maximum goodwill. We just heard Mr. Wasibur talk about, how for every incident you see armed forces coming out. I think that has been absolutely great. Just focus on these images which are in front of you. Those young girls cycling on an expedition with the Eastern Command sign on their jackets with so much of pride. Look at the cheer on their faces. It tells you a lot. Look at the picture below that. That little girl, beyond medical treatment, she is gaining so much from Captain Chandni, the medical officer who's treating her. I think is saying a story of its own. I don't need any words to describe it. And I think the message goes out loud and clear. Next, please. I think road connectivity has been touched upon. The Border Roads Organization, the amount of efforts that they have put in, I think comes out best if you see the two pictures which have been placed next to each other, what it was in 1962, a gun being towed, and what the road looks like now. Go next. Between 2014 and 19, the National Highway Authority of India and Border Roads have constructed 2,731 kilometers of roads in the northeastern states. I think it's a phenomenal achievement. Look at the picture. It says, welcome to the India-Myanmar Friendship Bridge. That means roads have reached right till the end of where they should. There is a requirement of a lot more. It's work in progress, but definitely work which is progressing at phenomenal pace. Next, please. Let's not forget the contribution of our armed forces, particularly the territorial army units, in providing security to rail projects in hitherto unthinkable areas. We have seen the kind of loss of lives that took place not very long back in the month of July, when a very sad landslide took away so many lives of civilians as much as the military people who were providing security to the rail, which is going into Manipur. Next, from the Indian Air Force, the pace at which they are constructing the advanced landing grounds, Menchuka, Misamari, Pasighat, Tezu, Tooting, Vijayanagar, all ready, functional, Alinea, along Dirang, Walong, work in progress, and work progressing at phenomenal pace, let me tell you. All this is providing the kind of connectivity that the Northeast region needs to each and every corner. It is being provided by almost every service, every department of the armed forces. Go next. Every year, during floods, during man-made disasters, these are very common images that we get to see. They are there for you, for the people of the Northeast, literally at your beck and call. Go next. Can we forget the image of this, fire that took place in that oil rig? Go next. Let me come to some other very subtle, less spoken ways in which the armed forces are contributing to the Northeast. This image, ladies and gentlemen, is of Army Public School, Shillong. Look at the faces of the girls and the boys. Unfortunately, the boys I had to exclude while making this slide. But look at the faces of these girls. They are from different parts of the country, and with what pride they are wearing the traditional Khasi dress and singing the hymn that they are singing. I think these children who are studying in these schools, who are local, are getting prepared to reach out and achieve what they want to achieve, as the Army commander had said, their talent and potential all over the world. And those children from other parts of the country who are studying in these army public schools and such schools in the Northeast region, I think are your greatest ambassadors on so many social occasions when I meet such people. And if they know that I am from the Assam regiment with so much of pride, they may be an IT person somewhere, they'll come and tell you with so much of pride, oh, I studied in Army Public School, Jorhat in Shillong. I think they are our greatest messengers. Go next, please. And these are the Sainik schools. Today, Sainik schools have taken such a strong leap. The picture that you see of those little girls, this is of the second batch of girls that joined the Sainik school in Mizoram. I think they have had a huge contribution, Sainik schools, and not only from the Northeast, I think it's from all over the country, really. We had, as I told you, the army commander is from Sainik school, Golpara. I'm, with all humility, from Sainik school, Purulia. Gogoi, sir? Are you one of them? Okay. We had a chief of army staff, Dalveer Singh Suhag. We had a chief of air staff, Air Chief Marshal Arup Raha. If that is not enough, Nefurio, by the way, is from my school, from Sainik School Purulia. He moved to Gorakhal. He is today Chief Minister of Nagaland. If that is not enough, ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of your country is an alumni of Sainik School Chittorgarh. I think these Sainik schools are a phenomenal place in which you can change the outlook of the future of this region if you were to continue. And again, with all humility, I must say, the Army Wives Welfare Association are in their own way contributing to this process of integration. Look at the image onto your right, I suppose. Yep, onto your left. The number of times the skills and products of the Northeast that is being carried to other parts of the country by the wives of the army personnel and put out on display for the rest of the country to see is a contribution by itself. And the image on the left is the current leader, Mrs. Nisha Kalita, who leads these efforts of the Northeast region to reach out to the rest of the country. So this is again a potential, an area with huge potential. Go next, please. And now I think we must remember some of the supreme sacrifices. Go next. I cannot obviously bring all of them in front of you, but let me bring some images in front of you. Here is Lieutenant Kishing Clifford Nogrum of Shillong, recipient of the Mahavir Chakra posthumously of 12th Battalion of the Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry, a young boy from Shillong in Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry, making the supreme sacrifice in Kargil. Look at the pride. Look at the pride in the two parents after such a loss. Look at the pride in the parents on what they have done for the nation. Do we need to, talk anymore? Go next. Here is Captain N. Kunguruz from Nagaland. Again, Mahavir Chakra posthumous from two Rajputana rifles. Young, 24 years old, from Nagaland, a leader of Jats and Rajputs in Rajputana rifles, leading them to victory in war, in Tololing, and making the supreme sacrifice. All of Dimapur, all of Shillong was out on the streets when their funeral processions went through. If anybody has any doubts on the patriotic spirit of the people of Northeast, I think that must be put to rest once and for all. Next, please. And here is Havaldar Hangpan Dada, recipient of the highest award in other than war, Ashok Chakra, again posthumously from my regiment, who died fighting militants in one of the toughest areas. In fact, there is a commanding officer from that area, Colonel Jamwal, who's sitting over here, a former GOC of that division, presently army commander, who are here. How this man from Arunachal single-handedly fought and killed 3 terrorists and, achieved, as we say in Hindi, Virgati, made the supreme sacrifice. With that, permit me to come to the Assam regiment, which I think is important. Yeah, next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Assam regiment, the word Assam actually is carried forward from erstwhile undivided Northeast. This is one entity, one organization that did not get swayed despite several times recommendations coming to the Assam regiment that would you like to, call yourself Northeast. But people steadfastly chose to say, no, we will retain our original identity. So it was raised on 15th June 1941. I would like you to read, the address of the governor then. It says, you are the living symbol of Assam's martial ardor, the embodiment of her physical strength, Assam undivided. Your steadfastness, your bravery, your skill, and your endurance will be such as few will equal and none will surpass. The regiment's war cry is Rhino Charge. Assam Vikram is the motto meaning unparalleled valor. And of course, everybody knows Tagda Raho is how we greet one another. Go next. And what the governor expected of this regiment on its raising on 15 June 1941, I think this regiment, which embodies, which epitomizes, which represents the Northeast, has demonstrated this in ample, look at the operational awards, 6 battle honors, 15 Chief of the Army Staff Unit citations, 40 General Officer Commanding in Chief Unit citations, Chief of the Army Staff, Best TA Battalion 4 times to 119 TA, GOC-in-C TA banner 15 times. This is no mean achievement. And 5 United Nations citations. And even those 2 ecological battalions that contribute to the ecology of the Northeast, in a short span of about 15-20 years, they have planted 1 crore 48 lakh saplings covering over 6,736 hectares. They have got the governor's unit appreciation and they have found their place in the Guinness Book of World Records. So it is quite a contribution, really. Go next. This regiment has won honors in shooting. It is just that it took us time to understand our talent, pick it up, and take it to win even the highest awards that any regiment can get in terms of winning the Army Rifle Association. Go next. In producing international level sportsmen, this is Chitranjan Singh, a unique find from Manipur, from the district level sports. That's how we were, getting them. As I said, I had the honor of being the center commandant. We were getting them from district level sports. Before even the army could send him to the national team, allow me to just share this anecdote. What had happened is we had finished our command tournament. The team was free. We got a request from Manipur that, look, you took this youngster from us to, and you enrolled him. Very nice. Thank you. But can he play for Manipur? That was an interesting request. We hadn't dealt with it in the past. So we went back to the Sports Control Board of the Army, Services Sports Control Board. We took a no objection certificate from them to allow him to play for Manipur before he could rise the ladder through the hierarchical army. Next day, he was playing for Manipur. 1 month later, he was playing in the national team. And this picture is when he was playing the Aga Khan against Pakistan. So that's the kind of contribution. Go next, please. I think I'm coming to the close of my time. He is not from my regiment, but he's from my region. It was so difficult for me to find a picture of Jeremy Lalrin Lunga in uniform, but finally I found it. Naib Sudara Jeremy Lalrin Lunga, as you all know him, winner of the gold medal in the Commonwealth Games 2022. I have just shown you 2 pictures and there are hundreds. My Center Commandant Brigadier Kanyal is here. He would be happy to tell you how many more have made such contributions. Go next, please. With that, I think I should come to the close of my presentation as the time also seems to be coming to a close. So all that I wish to say as a sort of submission at the end, that we have come a long way. Having come a long way, how do we sustain this? In order to sustain this, I wish to make a few recommendations. Not many. 1, when I had an opportunity to be the center commandant, you came with the assumption, Assam regiment, it's all uniform, everything is identical. But when you land up in Happy Valley, and when you see the dynamics, you see, okay, there are people from 1 Assam, the people from 2 Assam, 3 Assam, so on and so forth, till 15 Assam. So obviously, they come with a certain organizational culture, which is not identical from unit to unit. So I call them what I would say the horizontal divisions, 1 Assam, a certain organizational culture, 2nd Assam, a certain organizational culture, and so on. Then, very interestingly, I found, thanks to the multiplicity of influences which are there in Shillong, that, diversity which exists suddenly